Hi, everybody. Welcome to English Digest. I'm Tom.
Hi, I'm Stephanie.
It's our unit on the environment as we begin the month of March, and we're going to be talking about something called plant-based leather. Most of us probably own a garment or two made out of leather. And
At least some shoes, huh?
Especially shoes, right? But you might have a leather jacket or maybe even some lederhosen, which are leather pants from Germany.
No.
Or maybe you've got some leather gloves or something like that. I don't know. I have a few leather items, but yeah, as you said, they're mostly shoes.
It's hard to have leather in Taiwan, though, Tom, because it's so humid. I know if you don't wear it a lot, and if you leave it in your closet, it grows mold. You know, that green stuff on top because It's so humid here.
Exactly. So perhaps some people are looking for alternatives to leather.
Yeah.
And so we're going to be introducing the concept of plant-based leather to you today. Leather that comes from plants. There's another type of leather that's called vinyl. It's kind of like artificial leather, but that's kind of made from plastic and stuff like that. So I guess there is something good about leather that comes from plants, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. It offers new ways to look good. So let's get to it, everybody. Let's read through the entire contents of our article for today, and then we'll come back to discuss it.
The future of fake leather is growing in someone's garden. That's because more and more designers are starting to craft clothing from plant-based leather substitutes. These organic materials could open the door for the extended use of artificial leather, sometimes called vegan leather, without harming the environment. Plant-based leather is greener than common plastic-based leather substitutes. What's more, it doesn't require an animal to be killed, meaning that vegans and animal rights activists don't object to buying it. On top of that, it's safer for the workers who manufacture it. The harsh chemicals used to process animal leather or produce plastic can injure workers. Plant-based leather, by comparison, can be made without relying on dangerous industrial and chemical processes. One well-established method for producing plant-based leather comes from the Philippines and is called Pinatex. The leaves left over after pineapples have been picked or gathered up and turned into leather. This product has already been used by German and Portuguese clothing companies. Various other projects tend to reflect the common produce of their local fields. Plant-based leather is being made from cacti in Mexico, apples in Italy, and coconuts in India. As these processes are perfected and customers get used to the idea of plant-based leather, the future of this new material becomes more and more secure.
Okay, everybody, let's get to it. Let's talk about the contents of our article for today. We're talking about a kind of leather that comes from plants. So it's based on plants. It comes from plants. So we say plant-based leather, okay? So here it's a hyphenated word, plant-based. In other words, it's leather that comes from plants.
Right, so they're looking at plant-based leather to offer us more opportunities to use things that don't harm the environment or animals. We've got people out there that are looking to improve the environment, but also folks out there that love animals and don't want to use animal products. They're usually called vegans, right? So this is a way to produce something that makes a lot more people happy, and it looks good too. I haven't seen it myself in person, but I imagine it's pretty good looking.
Some other examples on this grammar pattern here, plant-based would be like oil-based paint, for example, or water-based paint. So those, of course, are paints or kinds of paint that have different foundations in them. But here we're talking about plant-based leather, and hey, it might make you look good. You want to look your best.
Yes.
Now, the future of fake leather is growing in someone's garden. Now, it's kind of interesting because when we talk about economic trends, we talk about growth, okay? Growth in the economy and stuff like that. When things get bigger and bigger, we say they are growing. But in this particular case, we're using the literal meaning of the word grow. It's actually growing in someone's garden. Maybe stocks will increase in price. The sector of the economy regarding fake leather might be growing, but actually it is growing in your garden because, of course, this leather is based on plants.
Yeah, so that's kind of exciting. It's a clever sentence by our writer here, mixing this idea of the economy growing with actually plants growing. So it's a cute sentence. If you can come up with a sentence like this, you're a good writer. So it's fake, meaning it's not real. Now, we have lots of fake products out there. If you buy, for example, a Rolex watch on the sidewalk, it's probably not real. It's probably fake. We have fake diamonds. We have people who are fake. If someone is a fake person or a fake friend, they're really not what they are appearing to be. We used to call some of our cheerleaders in high school fake because they would pretend to like everybody, but we all knew they didn't, or they weren't as nice as they pretended to be. So you can use it for people or products, both. So these plant-based leather products are growing fast, so it's becoming more and more common to see designers, probably clothing designers, or people who design products as well. They're starting to craft clothing and other things from these plant-based leather substitutes. A substitute is just something that is used rather than something else. For example, in school, we'll often have substitute teachers or teachers who substitute. We typically don't like those very much, but sometimes we have to have substitutes because teachers get sick. So it's an economy that's, or something in the economy that's really taking off.
Exactly. So some examples of substitutes would be like xylitol or sweet and low. Those are sugar substitutes, etc. So yeah, they're not going to use actual leather from animals. They're going to use the leather from plants. And these are substitutes for the real thing. And these organic materials could open the door for the extended use of artificial leather, sometimes called vegan leather, without harming the environment. So if they are successful in using these organic materials or natural plant-based materials, hey, we could have a lot more use for artificial leather. And artificial leather also sometimes is called vegan leather. That's a kind of leather that uses no animal products whatsoever. And, of course, we don't want to harm the environment in this process. Now, vegans, of course, are people who are vegetarians, but they also don't use animal products of any kind. No dairy products, for example. They don't use leather at all, so they try to abstain from using anything from animals.
Abstain just means to stay away from, not do something. So, yeah, we've got a lot of people out there who are also green-minded. Here it says in paragraph 2 that plant-based leather is greener. If something's greener, it just means it's better for the environment than the common plastic-based leather substitutes. Before we had this vegan leather or plant-based leather that was created or invented, we were using plastic-based leather products instead. It was vinyl usually. We'd have, you can sometimes have vinyl seats in your car, but if you have enough money, you can pay for the leather seats, which are much nicer. Or maybe you have a vinyl-covered sofa where the cushions are covered with that vinyl leather. It's not real, it's just vinyl. But now they're saying that it's even greener or better for the environment than plastic-based leather that we've had in the past. What's more, it doesn't require an animal to be killed, meaning that vegans and animal rights activists don't object to buying it. So this opens up the market to other people who in the past wouldn't have been interested in buying leather at all.
Indeed, and on top of that, or in addition, it's safer for the workers who manufacture it. So, of course, when you make something, you need to manufacture it, and something is usually manufactured in a factory. So, of course, if you manufacture leather or if you handle leather, you're going to be using some harsh chemicals, as it says in the next sentence here. The harsh chemicals, the nasty chemicals used to process animal leather or produce plastic can injure workers. This does happen when you're processing leather. It needs to be treated with certain chemicals, and people treat the leather with chemicals. Therefore, the people come in contact with those chemicals, and they can be harmed, especially if they work in the factory for many, many years. And this is also true when they produce vinyl or plastic leather because, yeah, you need all these chemicals to process these things. I guess you don't need those chemicals so much for plant-based leather.
Right, so now we've got a sentence that compares that with this. So we've got the harsh chemicals that are used to process leather that's really hard on workers. I think those fumes, the scent, the odors that they come up with when they're in the factories are really hard on lungs. So plant-based leather, by comparison, and we're comparing the factory workers that have to make the chemical processed animal leather and those that make the plant-based leather. We're comparing the two of them and telling you it's much better for factory workers to make the plant-based product because they don't have to rely on dangerous industrial and chemical processes. Industrial here is one of our vocabulary words. It's an adjective for industry. And industry is anything that provides a product or service to people out there to buy or sell. So industrial is often used, though, when we're talking about an injury or some sort of disease that a worker, a factory worker, came down with or sustained while they were actually in the manufacturing process when they're in the factory making something. And this often happens in some of these industrial factories that use dangerous chemicals or even big machinery.
It is something to consider there, and we'll continue to talk about plant-based leather as our lesson continues. But right now we're going to listen to our Chinese teacher.
听众朋友大家好，我是安娜。我们今天要来带大家看一下植物皮革。植物皮革真的是皮吗？对，真的是皮，而且不用动物的真皮耶。不过我们这篇是设计成克漏字，而我们要特别注意第一题跟第二题哦。像其实文章一开始第一段的第一句它有一点双关。他说人造皮革其实它的未来正在成长，它的动词用 is growing。那这个 grow 当然我们会觉得有成长或者甚至有种植的意思，破折号后面很妙哦，它给我们一个 in someone's garden， 其实是在某人的花园里面，当然不是真的长在花园了，而是说这个人造皮革的未来正在成长。为什么会成长呢？因为有越来越多的设计师，他们其实会用植物皮革的替代品来制作衣服。同样这一段的第二句我们特别注意一下动词的 craft，这里的 craft 跟后面的 from 要搭在一起哦，由什么东西来去制作 clothing， 制作衣服。那当然这些有机材料呢就可以为人造皮革或有时候我们称为所谓的纯素皮革广泛的使用的提供机会，但是并不会危害环境哦。在第一段的第三句的地方我们看到克漏字的第一题，它的选项 A through 是介系词，透过什么方式。B 在这里如果当 as 的话呢，它其实有成为什么样的身份。那么 C 的 for 通常后面都加上原因或者是目的，而 D 的 without 表示没有，所以第一格后面是没有伤害环境，这样子的文意上选择 D 的答案是比较正确的。好，那当然可能有些人会觉得说你不用动物的皮，不然用塑胶的也还 OK 啊。但其实植物皮革会比塑胶皮革还更为环保哦，而且它并不需要杀死动物。言下之意就是说，纯素主义者跟动物权利行动主义者就不会反对购买所谓的植物皮革。我们在第二段的地方请注意一下第二句。第二句这个地方我们看到一个关系子句的简化，逗点之后的 meaning 本来是 which means， 而这里的 which 特别指的是逗点前面的这整句话，也就是植物皮革，我们如果去使用它，动物就不会被杀啦。好，那么接下来呢，我们同样这一句的地方也要特别看到，因为它是克漏字的第2题。那么这一题要特别小心 object 这个动词的用法。如果你要反对一件事情，通常会用 object to something， 所以第2题只能选 D 的答案 to something， to 是介系词。好，那么除此之外还有什么样的好处呢？其实还有第2个好处，这个第2个好处就是对于制造皮革，也就是制造植物皮革的工人来说，其实环境上是比较安全的，因为就不会有一些化学物质。那么为什么会这么说呢？其实在第4句，同样这一段的第4句，我们可以看一下，他说的是用于加工动物皮革或者甚至是生产塑胶皮革这样子的一个状况，其实中间会有一些刺激性的化学商品，这些物品呢，这些制品都会伤害工人，所以我们在第2段的第4句特别注意一下，有一个简化的关系子句哦，先行词就是主词的 the harsh chemicals， 简化的关系子句从后面的 used 一直到 plastic 的地方，我们可以左右括号。那么它省略的是 which 或 that 跟 be 动词的 are。好，那么我们把关系词 that 或 which 省略掉之后，后面的 are 变成 being， 简化的情况之下直接删掉。所以在这里的 used to 是一个被动，被用来做什么的概念。好，那么既然是这样子的话，还有什么其他的好处呢？所以相较之下，这个就是所谓的制造植物皮革就不会依赖一些危险性的工业还有化学的过程。
We're going to take a quick break. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Welcome back, everybody. We're going to continue with our lesson. Remember, we're talking about plant-based leather in today's lesson, and also it's our unit on the environment. So, yeah, possibly if we use plant-based leather, it might be good for the environment. We did mention that there are some advantages to plant-based leather substitutes. Vegans will be able to use it. They won't feel guilty if they wear garments made out of plant-based leather. And animal rights activists will be happy too because, hey, we won't have to kill those animals for their leather anymore. And yes, indeed, we can probably put various weeds and things to use in the process, as we're going to find out today.
Now let's move on to the 3rd paragraph here, guys. It says one well-established method for producing plant-based leather comes from the Philippines, and it's called Pinatex. So we'll talk about that in a minute. Now, if something's established, it could be a business that's set up, that comes into that goes on the market, that can now buy or sell things out there. You can also establish other things. You can establish a good habit. If you get up every morning and you don't waste time and you get to school on time, that can be a habit that you establish. So you put it into practice and you just put it into your life. Well, this is a well-established method. So they started using this method again and again, and now it's pretty firm in the way that they produce things. So this is the Philippines we're talking about. The process is called Pinatex, and Tom tells me this is a Spanish word.
Right, of course, the Philippines were once a colony of Spain. So, of course, there's a lot of Spanish influence there. A lot of people from the Philippines have Spanish surnames, for example. So, of course, they've got this company in the Philippines called Pinatex. Pina is, of course, pineapple in Spanish. And the leaves left over after pineapples have been picked are gathered up and turned into leather. Now, they're not really weeds, but they are things that aren't used in this plant. Of course, if you grow pineapples, you want the meat from the pineapple to eat that. You don't really want the skin, and you don't want the leaves. So usually the leaves are just thrown out or burned or whatever. But in this case, the leaves left over after the pineapples have been picked and processed are then gathered up. They gather them together, and then they process them and turn them into this plant-based leather.
I wanted to mention it's a cute company name here, Pinatex, because tex is short for textile. A textile is a form or a type of garment, a material used to make clothing, or even coverings for furniture like sofas and things like that, pillows. So textile, it's kind of cute. Pineapple textile, kind of short for pineapple textile. So that is a company there in the Philippines, and they produce this plant-based leather. And yeah, I don't think anybody uses the leaves from pineapples. I never have. They're quite tough and sharp. So I'm glad they're being used for something productive. So they're gathering them up and turning them into leather. This product has already been used by German and Portuguese clothing companies. So the Germans are usually right on top of new technologies that come out. I've noticed that they're very good about this. So they picked up this technology, but so did the Portuguese, who, of course, are probably in Portugal, the country of Portugal. And the clothing companies are now using this very same process.
Indeed. So if you are aware of any clothing companies from Germany or Portugal, then you might order some garments from them online or something like that.
Maybe you could use the internet and just look up Pinatex and see what comes up and then go from there.
Okay, and to continue here, various other projects tend to reflect the common produce of their local fields. Okay, so we're talking about various other projects. In other words, various efforts, various companies that are trying to do something similar to Pinatex there. These are various. Various just means many or several other projects. And, of course, they tend to reflect the common produce of their local fields. So, in other words, they would use leaves from pineapples in the Philippines because the Philippines, that is a very tropical country and they're going to have lots of pineapples there. And so they'll use the leaves from pineapples. But if you're in, say, Canada, for example, maybe you'll use stuff from, I don't know, maple trees or whatever and try to turn maple leaves or tree bark into artificial leather. Who knows?
Yeah. Just look at the kind of produce that country produces. Produce here, it means some sort of fruit or vegetable that you can grow, common produce. You might look at that and think it's produce, but it's not. It's a noun, produce. Sorry about that. And notice that the stronger accent, the stronger syllable is on pro. So produce is something that can be grown. Yeah. Most countries have their specialties. Taiwan has too many specialties. We have good weather here. I think it's good for growing different kinds of things. So if you tend to do something, guys, this is one of our vocabulary phrases here. It just means you probably are likely to do that. You're liable to do that. Maybe you have a particular characteristic that might make you do a certain thing or choose a certain activity. For example, I tend to get up early in the morning and go to bed early. My neighbors around me in my building tend to stay up late and get up late. You just have different tendencies. That's the noun form. A tendency is just something you're likely to do. So they tend to reflect or be based on the common produce of the country that's producing some sort of product or working on some sort of project.
Right, these local fields, of course, would be referring to farming fields. So maybe here in Taiwan, mango trees, for example, or guava trees would produce leaves and maybe they get thrown out or something.
Yeah.
But they could actually try to turn them into plant-based leather. So that would be a local project here in Taiwan if somebody were to do that. And plant-based leather is being made from cacti in Mexico, apples in Italy, and coconuts in India. So these are some examples of local produce in various countries. Of course, Mexico has a lot of cacti. That's where I think tequila comes from, a kind of cacti or something.
Really?
Like agave or something like that. I'm not 100% sure because I'm not much of a tequila drinker. But Italy, of course, has lots of apples there. So they probably get leaves and branches and stuff from apple trees. And then in India, of course, they have lots of coconuts. So maybe they use coconut shells there or palm fronds from coconut palms, and they turn that stuff into artificial leather.
I don't even think about India when I think of coconuts. That's interesting. So these are some of the types of produce that are common in Italy, Mexico, and India. I'm from Arizona, and we have a lot of cacti, which is the plural word for cactus. Those are those plants that have little sharp points on them. They're not very attractive to some people. I don't love them, to be honest. There are better things about the desert than the cacti, but that's one of the things they're using to produce this plant-based leather. I think that's closer to the leaves on a pineapple. They're very hard and kind of sharp. So as these processes are perfected, as they get better and better at making this stuff, and customers get used to the idea of plant-based leather or even hear about it. To be honest, this is the first time I've heard about plant-based leather. Pretty shocked they can even make such a thing. That's amazing. As these things happen, the future of this new material becomes more and more secure, meaning they're going to have more opportunities to sell products to people out there, customers who are eager to buy their stuff, which is great.
Right. I think most people probably don't care if animals are getting killed, etc., or if it's good for the environment. They just want to look their best, okay? So if some of these companies produce plant-based leather that actually looks attractive and makes people be the star of a show or something like that and turns heads, if you're a lady wearing a leather skirt and you're walking down the sidewalk and all the guys are looking at you, then we know that that particular type of leather is very successful. So that's probably what's going to decide whether this material becomes popular or not, how it makes us look.
Yeah, ultimately the product has to work. It either has to taste good or look good for people to be willing to buy it. Okay, guys, we're going to listen to our Chinese teacher for a few more minutes, and then we'll be back to say goodbye.
那到底要怎么样来制造植物皮革呢？其中有一个还蛮被认可的植物皮革的制造方式，就来自于菲律宾，那它就被称为 Pinatex。那这种方法呢，它其实是把凤梨摘下来之后的叶子收集起来，变成皮革。好，我们来看一下第三段第二句这个地方。第三段第二句啊，其实主词有点长，从 the leaves 就是凤梨的叶子，一直到 picked被摘下来，这个地方都是句子的主词哦，所以句子其实带了一个时间 after， 在凤梨被摘下来之后留下的那些叶子才出现动词 are gathered up and turned into leather。 好，那么像这样的产品啊，在德国啊、葡萄牙的服装公司都有采用这样子的一种制成，还有一些其他的植物皮革，比如说在墨西哥就用仙人掌来做，在意大利呢，则是用苹果，而是在印度呢，就是用椰子。因为这一些加工方法越来越完善，而且顾客也开始习惯植物皮革这种概念，所以新的材料的未来就变得越加的稳固哦。不过最后一个重点还是要提醒大家，因为我们之前曾经在第二段的第四句有看到一个简化关系子句当中的 used to， 我们刚刚说它是一个被动的概念，可是在这里第三段第六句的get used to something， 大家可以画起来，则表示另外一个意思，它指的是习惯了，习惯什么什么东西。to 是介系词。好，这是我们今天的内容，有关于植物皮革，或许大家下次可以尝试看看哦。我是安娜，我们下次见。
Okay, everybody, that brings us to the end of our lesson for today. Thank you so much for joining us. And hey, let us know if you have any leather garments that are made from plant-based leather. Maybe send us a picture or two and let us know what you look like. I'm sure you'll probably look your best if you're wearing this type of leather. From all of us here at English Digest, I'm Tom.
I'm Stephanie.
Goodbye.
Bye.